the best ways to go back to the beginning, how I got involved with Russia. I was
Right.
working for a American corporation called Teledyne, based in Los Angeles. We're one of the first, really, Henry Singleton built one of the first U.S. conglomerates. And we were involved in 4 different sectors: um, aerospace and aviation, electronics, specialty metals, consumer goods, industrial goods. So very, very broad. And what Henry did was take a medium-sized company. This is his business model, and take the number 1 or 2 in that specialty and buy it and build up these assets. So I was working for a division of Teledyne, and we're involved in engineering projects in the energy sector. We did a lot of nuclear, petrochemical, and others. And post Chernobyl, we developed a program for the U.S. Department of Energy to check all the rest of the RMBK reactors that are Chernobyl-like, and got the DOE to fund it. And unfortunately, we weren't even though we wrote the program, got it funded, we were not shortlisted. I don't know, like someone like Lockheed or Grumman got the work. So anyway, we were working with the Atomic Energy Ministry at the time, Soviet Union, and I didn't, these guys were really strange. They had these strange alphabet and strange language. So at the time, this is 1989, and the only evening program, we're in the Boston area, South Shore. The only evening program for Russian language was the Harvard Extension. So I started the program studying Russian language 3 years on the evenings. And I finished the program. Out of the group that started my class, 2 of us finished. Wow. By that time, that program had gone away, and things. I moved on. We moved on to other things, and I was doing BD, business development, globally, and traveling the world. The wall came down and met the vice president of Europe for Teledyne, saying, at this time we were making forays into Eastern Europe, most of the work traveling to Poland, Hungary, Czechoslovakia at the time. Never made it to Russia, but the VP said, okay, we're going into Russia. We need someone there. Do you want to go? This is 1994. And so then my wife and I moved there in 1995 to run Teledyne's operations. Had some language skills. My wife took intensive language training for 6 months, and her Russian is very good too. So we're there in 1995, and Teledyne has a hostile takeover attempt. So we were involved. We had 30 companies for the group, and we were having success in aviation and consumer goods and other areas. That's when I got involved with the chamber in 1997, 96, 97, and got on the board. So the hostile takeover attempt ended in the eventually splitting the company into 4 parts, 1 which was sold, and 3 listed companies. I had opportunities to come back to the U.S., but they were really boring. We were having a good time in Russia.
Yeah.
And just being there, you could sense the opportunity. At that time, you could buy assets for pennies on a dollar of industry, different things. It was very poor at the time. Russia was on its knees. You remember those days with Yeltsin. Yeah. So it was intriguing. We had language skills. There's a big demand, and I joined Deloitte as COO in 1998, January 1998.
Okay, January 1998.
Yeah. So we at the time were the we're the we're number 7 of the big 6. So we were really bad. We
Yeah.
were really poorly organized. It was a mess. So my job as COO was to help fix the company. Um, but
In Russia or
in Russia, which we had the territory, the CIS territory, so the former Soviet Union without the Baltic states.
yeah.
So
And were you mainly a USAID contractor, or what was the source of your business in Russia?
which Teledyne or Deloitte?
Deloitte.
Oh, Deloitte, no, it's private companies. So mainly, we had to follow our clients there. So people, you know, global companies like GM or any sector that were going there and opening up shop, they needed audit, they needed tax advice, they needed other services that we provide to those companies worldwide.
I
Okay,
see. Yeah.
um, because the Russian corporate work didn't really open up until late of the 90s, and really through the aughts it really went full bore.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
went from I saw it in transition, historically, that the government owned all the assets, and then the government got rid of the assets, and that was really how that happened. Didn't know, but they ended up in the hands of new owners,
Right.
private ownership, and it took a while for those private owners to say, we need help. We want to go to the capital markets, therefore we need audit. We have no management systems. We have no, back office. We have no management reporting, et cetera, et cetera. So all the services that we provide as a company to help them really modernize and become, full-fledged corporation with governance, reporting and all that, we did.
Okay. I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I want to go back. 1996 election.
Yes.
Did that impact you? How were you thinking about that in 1996?
Yeah, 96 was thinking, is the country going to go forward to I almost say a liberal democracy, but to a democracy, is it going to go backward to the communist? And so
Yeah.
that was really that was an inflection point where the country decided the way forward. So it was really, didn't know which way it was going to go. I mean, it was really close,
Yeah.
and Yeltsin tips the scales and and ended up in power
Yeah.
with a
Yeah.
little bit of help, but that was a good thing. That
Yeah.
was a good thing.
Yeah.
It kind of showed that the country was ready to move forward beyond communism.
Yeah. Yeah.
That
Yeah.
was a big deal. Yeah.
Yeah. And was it a big topic of discussion among the expat community at that time?
Oh, absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. Because I forget who was president at the time. I think it was Clinton who was
Yeah.
president. We had
Yeah.
the we had the Gore Chernomaritan business group.
Yeah.
They had a very positive relationship. I think Clinton had a good relationship with Yeltsin, and the U.S. was doing everything to help out. And so, yes, it was a big topic of discussion.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I think we as Americans didn't want to see it go backward. I think that any of those opportunities that were created in the next decade wouldn't have happened.
Yeah. Yeah.
You wouldn't have seen the privatizations. You might have seen a recapturing or taking back of industries and so forth. So
Right.
yeah, that was key.
Yeah. And was the expat community very big at that time?
Yeah, in the mid '90s, it was pretty small.
Yeah.
Um, so you knew people through AmCham. That was kind of our circle. You had your people in the organization, like Deloitte. We had more people from other parts of the world, UK, Australia, whatever. But we were short on Americans, and it was Americans don't like to go overseas, and
Yeah,
also, the whole package to get Americans over there was much more costly than bringing people from other parts of the world
yeah,
with the
I
same
see.
expertise.
Right. And how about Russians? Did you have Russians at that time, or were you?
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, it was take Deloitte. We were 90% at the time, so we might have. Uh, so here's the transition, Dan. Is that 1998? Deloitte had 7 partners, including myself, and 125 staff in the CIS. We got a new managing partner who said, he saw what this could be, and so I helped put together the strategy. When I left 2008, the numbers they're probably directionally correct, but they're not perfect.
Right.
I'd say we had 170 partners and at least 3,500 staff.
Wow.
Okay,
Yeah.
so we were growing like 50% a year for 10 years.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
and that was, of those 7 partners, maybe we had 2 Russians and 5 foreigners. And by the end, through that whole decade, we developed partners. Russians are very smart. I built a consulting business from scratch. I built a financial advisory business from scratch. When I left in those 2 businesses, we probably had 40 partners and 600 staff. So, and we had the program. There was a program where people were educated in the U.S.
Uh-huh.
Named after 2 senators. I can't recall.
So Muskie and
Yeah, yeah.
yeah.
So I was hiring in the late '90s, early 2000s. They're mandatory repatriation business school graduates. I hired the first Russian that went to Kellogg Business School, et
Yeah.
cetera, et cetera. And so really a lot of people that lived in the West came back, saw, understand everything, and we're off and running. And then bringing people up, and then the education system in Russia adapted where they were teaching economics, they're teaching accounting, they're teaching other things. So very quick learners. And by the time I left, of the 170 partners, more than half of those were Russian, and
Uh-huh.
96% of the staff.
Yeah.
When we were building the business, we needed subject matter experts. We would bring in partners and senior managers as to lead those practices, but quickly had all the human capital we needed in the country.
Yeah. In the country. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. I mean, I think
and
that.
that includes Ukraine and Kazakhstan and
Okay.
other areas. So we had a big practice in Almaty and in Kiev, probably over 500 people in each place.
And would they operate separately, or was it all part
No,
of?
this is part of our organization.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Yeah, part of our Deloitte CIS.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So let me back up to another inflection point. 1998, when the crash happens in August of 1998. What were you thinking?
Well, I was thinking it's short term. Like most people that we've been through these cycles before, but it was really bad. My job when I came into was to restructure Deloitte, but that changed to restructuring and downsizing. So we closed our financial advisory, closed our consulting practices, we closed our office in St. Petersburg, et cetera, et cetera. We kept small office in Kiev and Almaty, but we downsized considerably. Um, but in the back of our minds, and again, we knew that this country may be on its knees, but if you look at just natural resources, Russia with natural resources is either number 1 or 2 in either production or reserves.
Yeah.
Take for example, this became our audit client, Norilsk Nickel. Norilsk Nickel provides 40% of the world's nickel.
Yeah.
Production wise.
Yeah.
And then when you audit their reserves, we had cut off their reserves at the current production level. They have enough to last more than 250 years.
Wow. Wow.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So they're not going to go away.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the oil, you go on from that resource rich. So you had the resource rich on one hand, and you had the human capital. Because one thing the Soviet system did, these people were educated, and they're educated in mathematics, in the world, in music, in arts. So they're literate. They read literature. So a bunch of smart people, a bunch of resources, and it was just, it did pan out through the 2000s how this worked, with oil down to $10 and then shortly going up to $100.
Yeah. Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
so you were able as an organization to take a longer view. Well, it seems like,
it wasn't, we were on the ground, and this is what you alluded to. We on the
right.
ground were taking a longer view. The people back in New York at Deloitte were saying, why don't we just close it down? We'll give our audit clients, let E&Y do our audit clients. We were losing money, tens of millions a year. They were tired of pouring money into it. So what happened in '99 is the partners in Russia bought out the partnership. So the way the Deloitte model works is that the country partners own the partnership, except this was like a new market. So we were kind of backed by the global firm. The global firm was saying, well, we've lost how many millions over the time we opened the office here, and we said, well, we'll take it. We took a risk and took it off their hands.
Yeah.
And the prediction was that we wouldn't be solvent for a number of years. And by '99, we were breaking even. By 2000, we were making money.
Right. Yeah, because of the recovery.
Because of the recovery, and then the demand for the services we provide.
Yeah. And the demand that began to expand by '99 and 2000, was it both foreign and domestic companies, or was it primarily foreign companies again?
It was both.
Yeah.
It was both. So you had, they had these financial industrial groups who were aggressive in various sectors. Take, Winbill Dan just in juice.
Right.
You had Alpha and others going into retail with, I forget the name of their markets. And we helped create 2X Alpha partners that Friedman bought out. We helped them create what's called Mossmart. It's the Walmart equivalent. And so two guys created this from scratch in Pushkin Square, from sitting in a room with Deloitte consultants, and built it into a $1 billion business.
Wow.
So, yeah. So the Russian side saw that, be it in banking, be it in retail, be it in telecom, but in all these sectors.
Yeah. And so they came to you to help them get that sort of Western business expertise and systems that would allow them to realize these vision that they have.
Yeah, well, we brought in, for the Mossmart case, we brought in ex-Walmart global VP. We brought in people that knew how to do this in other places, and advise them on the best business model
Right.
for the market.
Right. Well, so this was kind of the heyday of the globalization integration of Russia into the global markets.
Correct.
Right.
Correct.
Yeah.
So then you had Russians trying to grab share, and you had others coming in, be it in um, automotive. So you had Toyota, Ford. We consulted all those guys, and Mercedes. And so you pick any sector. So my subject matter expertise was in energy, but I was the point man for incoming U.S. business. So it could be, Kellogg trying to produce cornflakes in Russia, et cetera, et cetera. So everybody was jumping in because during that period, the numbers are like GDP per capita grew 4 to 5 times. There was a new consumer class, people that didn't have access to, buying things for the home now could buy them, et cetera, et cetera. So
yeah. Was that driven by oil prices?
I think that's one of the factors. I think there was pent up demand by people that had nothing, wanting something. Be it I want to paint my house, now I could buy paint. I want to paint my walls, or the plethora of just white goods for the home. That our first apartment was an apartment building off Leningradsky Prospect, and it was a building for retired Russian generals. Our landlord was a 4-star general. His wife was a doctor.
Uh-huh.
They had no modern amenities, no dishwasher, no microwave, no washer, no dryer. They washed their clothes in the tub and hung them on the balcony.
Wow.
So that's how that's the upper level people were living. So once you could consume, have these consumer goods,
right,
and natural amenities, that was just a boom. And I think oil prices might have been a trickle down effect of spreading the wealth throughout. But as oil, gas, other commodities, I think that drove a lot of it.
Yeah. So when it just, again, I'm hoping I'm not wandering all over the place with my questions here, but
I'm sure you have to focus.
The flow. Yeah, but when you moved there, you moved to this apartment on Leningradsky Prospect?
Yes, right behind Dinamo Stadium. Yeah.
Okay. And did you consider moving into one of the sort of expat townhouse, developments?
No, we wanted the Russian experience because
okay.
we went out to, what is it, Rosinka?
Yeah.
And the guy says, "Hey, look, it's just like Ohio." I said, Kim and I looked at each other and said, "We don't want to live in Ohio. We want to live in Russia."
Yeah.
So we had the language skills. We were able to go out and about. We can ride the metro. Even though my whole time there, I had a car and a driver. I love using the language. I love interacting with the people, getting out in the markets and talking to people. That wasn't the experience we wanted.
Yeah. Do you think that differentiated you from other expats?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And maybe even a bit of a competitive advantage in terms of your understanding of things?
Oh, yeah, because understanding people starts with language. So, and the language is very, very high, rich, descriptive, emotional. And you get that, and you learn all the idioms and sayings, and it's fun. It was fun.
Yeah. So you weren't stuck with the typical foreigner pectopa when a restaurant, right?
Yeah. Or is it? What's the? Pectopa. Let's read the one was this. Anyway, so yeah, I know people that, and a lot of those words slip into your language too, like remont and things like that.
Right. Well, I just as an aside, there are certain things that just work better in Russian than in English, and they kind of you want to say them if you've gotten used to them,
Mhm.
uh, just, I don't know, simple things, but holy,
Yeah.
I mean,
Or just the way people interact. And I
yeah,
was, if you're on the boulevard ring and you're sitting on the park bench and two old ladies come by arm in arm and they're actually like singing to each other,
mm,
almost like an opera.
yeah,
It,
yeah,
it's different.
it's different. Do you think that your personality is different in Russian than it is in English?
Конечно. It is. It is. It is. I think. Yeah, I think so.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. And what was the language that was used in Deloitte's offices? Was it primarily English or?
primarily English.
Yeah.
Yeah, English was the working language. Well, really required by as an audit firm, all the audit work, whether it be U.S. GAAP or IFRS, is all in English.
Uh,
All the accounting rules are written in English,
right.
and the exams are in English.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I don't think that's changed, but it didn't stop me. I love using a language. So
Yeah. Yeah. And so it's part of this project. I'm actually speaking to more people like you. Uh, most because of the language, we're able to feel more of an integration into the society. Although not everybody, a lot of people, it seems to me, would tell, even people who are there long term would say, I'm not good with languages. I never got it. My Russian is bad, but I got by. But then there's a whole other set of people who lived there, who are part of the expat community, probably that left around 1998, who didn't learn the language and lived a different, kind of lifestyle.
sure.
Yeah. You do you agree with that sort of?
Oh yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
we have. Uh, uh, my wife's in the book club here, and so the book club was Bill Browder's book, right? Red Notice.
Okay.
Okay, and so for the book discussion, they had me come in and another person he was the first guy to open BP's business in Russia and lived at Rosinka.
Yeah.
And when we were telling our stories, it was two different views of the world,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
Because he never really got out and interacted with people, always had security around him, went from the office to home, and maybe went to a restaurant or so forth, but very, very different. Not going out in the Renix and haggling with the vendors. you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah. 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 And probably also not traveling outside of Moscow or St. Pete.
Probably not. Might have gone to a couple oil fields, but probably not. I mean, I traveled extensively, got out. I love getting out to the regions. It's different. People are different in the small towns of Russia than in Moscow.
Right. Right. Right.
So
Right. I I have a memory, and I haven't been able to find it, of reading in Moscow News that at the time in the 1998 crisis, there were 250,000 foreigners in the expat community
okay.
in Moscow, and that huge number, maybe half at least, left in 1998. But do you think does that number ring true to you, that there were that many?
I, it depends how you count them. If I mean, what expats? I mean, if you take the foreigners that work in construction and so forth, like the Tajikis,
No, no, not
now
them.
you're talking
No,
professional
no.
class, management class
Yeah,
people, families. Dan, I recall that the embassy had and it might be somewhere to check. They would register. You would register at the embassy if you're
Right.
there. And they said they thought they had about half the Americans, and they had, I think the number was 2,500 or 3,000
Really?
Americans. Yeah.
Oh,
Okay. So that's what's in my vague, memory to dust off, but it was something like that. So that probably seems about right.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
We
that's,
saw more people because we were in AmCham. I hired Chris when I came in as chairman. We hired Chris for marketing, but I chaired for 2 years, 2000, 2001. We had 700, 800 companies. Some of them were Russians just joining in, trying to make contacts. But
right.
if you would take the core companies like U.S. Fortune 500, we probably had half of them were active in the market.
Yeah.
So just expanding that, it kind of makes sense.
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
number.
Yeah. So that's a much smaller number.
Yeah.
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 So a pretty big impact from a small number of people.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think so. I mean, we
Yeah.
did a study. I mean, just one thing. We did a study of kind of core values of companies led by Americans versus Russian-led companies, and there was a vast difference of the way we're saying honesty, integrity, all these things, right? And so, how much of that got through? I think it did. We had to operate totally clean, totally white. There was no gray area for us.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. No Krisha.
no Krisha.
Yeah.
Well, we had a security company,
Yeah. Yeah.
but no Krisha. But the security company, when Westerners do stupid things and get into trouble, we had to sort that out. But
Uh-huh.
it was small town stuff, not any big overriding threat. We were under investigation for tax issues. Deloitte, you could probably Google it and find it, and that went on for 3 years, and it was totally fraudulent. It was retribution of someone's son who works for the tax group that thought their father was wronged by Deloitte in one way, took it out on us. It took 3 years. We finally got to presidential administration and Kashyana. We're going through the courts and everything, but talked to presidential administration and they fixed it because it was wrong. But
Yeah.
but no one got hurt. So
Right.
the people involved didn't get punished. It was like, okay, stop doing this. Do it to other people, but not to Deloitte because they audit a quarter of our national companies.
Is that true? You were auditing a quarter of the national companies?
Well, I would say owned by the government, but
Yeah.
big companies. So if you take the big four and you just take a market share of a quarter, that's roughly true.
Yeah. Okay.
PwC had the largest share of resource companies, so they did Gazprom and others. But we were okay operating as tax advisors, non-audit tax, financial advisors, consulting, technology advisors to the other companies like Lukoil or TNK or Kordakovsky's company before it went into Rosneft, and then we worked for Rosneft.
Uh-huh. 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 Yeah. Yeah. But this whole court thing was a personal grievance that
Yes.
led to this.
In Russia, most things are personal. It's not about money. I mean, you just don't. If you cross someone, it's bad.
Yeah.
More so than you can screw somebody in business, but that's business, and they get that. But if it becomes personal, then beware. And that's yeah.
Yeah. It's
And I think that's what Khodorkovsky was all about. It was not. It was is very personal, very visceral between him and Putin.
uh-huh. That's I think I've encountered this with someone else, and I'm having a trouble remembering it, but I know in my interviews this has come up, and I think it is a strange thing for Americans to understand that at a high level, that kind of personal uh, insult or personal grievance could lead to such a large scale kind of legal or political action. It's
No, absolutely. But on the other hand, if you gain the trust of Russians, they will do anything for you as well, right?
yeah,
So if you serve them well, and then they would, do anything for you.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Because it does become personal. Say, well,
So in a lot of
Jim, what do you need? I'm like, I don't need that.
yeah,
I was just doing my job, right?
yeah, yeah, yeah. But in the position you were in, then probably building personal relationships with clients was a critical aspect of what you were doing, right?
Correct.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. Correct. So, a lot of the oligarch class, so, Alpha, I was COO, and this is interesting. So, this is a sidebar that the banks collapsed, and we lost millions. I don't know if it was Minitep, one of the Russian banks, and they just kept it. So we had payroll, and we couldn't do payroll, so we went to ING Bank. So for 6 months, ING Bank would stuff envelopes with cash, and I'd go with our Krisha,
yeah,
we'd
right.
go pick it up with shotguns and everything, we'd bring back, and then we'd have like 8 to 9. Your name ends A to D. You come and pick up your envelope. So we didn't have a bank that was functioning. Um, and as we came out, we were the first Western corporate client for Alpha Bank.
Huh.
Okay,
In '99, is
it's
that?
probably 99.
Yeah,
So they brought us a payroll solution with credit cards, debit cards, for us, and so Friedman was really grateful, Michael Friedman and Alex Knaster and Piotr Oven. So so because once you get like, oh, Deloitte uses us for payroll,
right.
like why would you use us, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah. So things like that happen. They're very, anything I ever needed from Friedman, he was open.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Because you had built that relationship, and
Because he built that relationship. And
yeah,
we
yeah,
said, okay, they said, trust us. We're going to do a good job.
uh-huh.
And it was like, okay, we
Yeah,
trust.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So, and how did you end up with Norilsk as a client? Was that also relationships?
Yeah, but it wasn't my client. So that was on the audit side.
Oh,
Uh,
okay.
yeah, just building relationship with, I forget who owned it. I think it was Patanin and
Right.
others. So it was relationships,
Yeah. Yeah.
but not, I worked on other things, but that was an audit client, so it wasn't mine
Right.
per
So
se.
at what point when you were doing there did you recognize consciously that relationships were going to be the key aspect to your business?
Um, well, in our business, it always was. Okay,
Yeah. Okay.
so I probably, when we were growing over that decade, probably spent a third of my time on relationships and client development, a third of my time on human HR hiring, building an organization, HR issues, probably the other third of the time to actually working on projects, overseeing projects, and managing the practice. So that, and then, actually we built, and then I built a model at Deloitte. It was called we called it this the CIS 30. These were our top 30 clients, and the top 30 clients accounted for um, a lot of revenue. Okay,
Yeah.
a lot of revenue. So we built client service teams and relationship management teams for each of those clients, with a partner in charge to develop that. So that's part of the Deloitte business model anyway.
Right.
But um, the the Russians had a problem with that concept between relationships and friendships. So they just like they wanted. It was hard because they couldn't see developing a relationship that wasn't a friendship.
Uh-huh.
Right?
Uh-huh.
You didn't have a business professional relationship. It had to be personal. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And some of the Russians were like, well, this is stupid,
Yeah.
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 What are you asking me to do? Become their friends? I don't want to be their friends. I'm like, no, it's not that. So,
Yeah.
but it worked. It worked.
You mean some of your Russian staff were saying, what are you really asking me to do with these guys?
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, so it was just like go to their birthday parties and send presents to their kids for their birthdays and stuff like that.
Not really. I mean, because we don't do that. It's Deloitte. So
Yeah. Yeah.
like, a partner would come to me and say, well, we did this work. We should buy this guy a nice expensive watch. I'm like, no, we don't do that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Do that, do it on your own, out of your pocket. But it's
Uh-huh.
not
Right.
what we do. So we're careful on that. So I think you're getting at, it's not that personal. It's a business relationship. It's
It's
a
a business
professional
relationship.
relationship.
Right.
Some of those can develop into personal relationships. I'm
Yeah.
not saying they
Yeah.
don't. In fact, the TNKVP CFO and his wife, my wife, they come to the U.S., we go to the U.K., and it's back and forth. But we're Westerners.
Yeah. 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 But do you think it's more this way in Russia, or did you feel it was than generally in the world of business that you operate in? Is it more relationship focused in Russia than elsewhere, or not?
I'd say not. I'd say it's more. Even though we tried that, it, working for the let's put it this way, Dan. Working for the Western companies, the relationship was important. People got it, and they understood that. And Russians, it was more transactional.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. It was more
Yeah.
transactional. Yeah.
Yeah. So when I came back to the U.S., I was handling all of our key energy clients in the Northeast, and it's to use a basketball um, analogy, it's like hanging around the hoop. So
Yeah.
you develop a relationship with the CEO, CFO, you have lunch, you're bringing them, some thoughts and ideas, having a conversation about their business and their problems. And maybe sometime we can fit in, maybe we don't fit in, but you're constantly there, because they're looking for intelligence from you, what's going on, and you got to bring them something.
Right.
But you're hanging around, then the opportunity comes, and since you were just there, they call you and say, Jim, we got a real problem, and
Yeah.
Can you get 10 people to my office on Monday to start on this problem? Yeah.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. But your approach in Russia was different than that.
No, we tried the same approach.
Tried the
Tried
same.
the same approach. Yeah.
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 And so your AmCham and the golf club, are those part of the relationships, or were they part of just your personal social life, or were they a mixture, or what how did those work?
Um, it was a combination. I think AmCham was more when it got involved. AmCham was at the forefront of having the pulse on what's going on in the government
Uh-huh.
and what changes are coming down. And AmCham had, through it was Gore Cherner-Min, and then it became under Bush. It was like the U.S. Russian. So we had um, Don Evans was the Secretary of Commerce, and um, he runs Sparebank now. He was
Grep, Grep.
Reft was the Minister of the Economy. So we had
Yeah.
this relationship and involved with that. So that at being, at the nexus of business and government and policy was very important. The U.S. Russian relationship was important to business,
Uh-huh.
and being there at the table was important to be impactful on that process.
Right.
Just in general, just for a general business climate, right? Did it benefit my business? Yeah, maybe in a way, but developed a lot of strong relationships with people on the board and company members and so forth. So that became, outside of the work social group, the AmCham group, and then we joined the golf club, and there was overlap from some of the AmCham people, but you had a very diverse group at the club, probably a third Russian, a third Asian, a third Western. Um, that was more a social release to get
Yeah.
out of the city and out of the office and play golf and just relax. But then there was overlap with business where you play golf with Russians who were quite wealthy, and they were involved in things that they needed help on. I
Yeah.
wouldn't say that was a major source of client development, but it was just all, and that group became friends. Part of our social group became the club, AmCham, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So that was important to us, my wife and I, for a balanced lifestyle,
Uh-huh. Yeah.
other than just be in the city and work, work, work.
Yeah.
Because we worked at least 12 hours a day, and you needed to get away from it all.
Right.
So,
Right. And your wife also, you haven't mentioned that what was she? She was working as well?
yes,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
What kind of business did she have?
She was mostly consumer goods.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
You might want to talk to her. She was first involved in some USAID projects. She started the first production of orange juice from Florida concentrate at milk plants.
Cool.
That
Cool.
was really cool, and
Yeah.
it was it's this is not the packaging that's on the shelf, not refrigerated. That's dead juice. There's no live organisms in it. This was live juice, had to be refrigerated, handled properly, supply chain, all
Yeah.
that. So
Yeah.
that was the first project. Then she went to work. She did some consulting as an outside consultant for Coopers and Lybrand. She did some work for Mars and the pet food, developing pet food. Russians didn't have pet food,
Right. Right.
right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's a huge new market, right?
Yeah.
So worked on that.
And they love their pets. So
Huh?
they love the pets.
Love their pets. And
Yeah.
then she went to work for a Russian startup manufacturer of swimwear and athletic wear, like gym clothes, yoga clothes, and help them develop their product and get it in they're still doing very well.
Huh. Wow.
Then she went to work for an advertising firm like Saatchi and Saatchi,
Yeah.
and was doing some work there. And then she was hired by a client, which was in um, a UK retailer called Monsoon Accessorize. Monsoon was mostly ladies, casual clothing. Accessorize is what it is, all accessories. And you would see them in airports in Europe. They had 85 stores in Russia, and I think two of the top selling stores in the world. Volume,
Wow.
yeah. So women's wear and stuff like that. So she did that. That's where she was when she left. So she did a lot in the consumer goods area in terms of specialty.
Yeah.
She has a Northeastern MBA,
Okay.
and yeah, spoke her Russian was very good. She worked with a company. You ever heard of the name Greg Thane by any chance?
No.
Okay, Greg had a company. They had training. They had a software problem called Store Wars, and they would train people in retail management.
Oh, okay.
She did a lot. We got involved with the Chamber Orchestra Kremlin on early days. Misha Raklevsky, and we helped them with their business plan, developing. Uh, we were both on the board. Then I got off the board. Kim chaired the board, and we were very involved with the orchestra. They're world, top 10 chamber orchestras in the world. And if you ever heard of them, they're really good. And you have a chance to see them perform in Russia. It's outstanding.
Yeah.
So we got involved with that. And that was another group of people too. So
Yeah.
then we were, United Way Russia, et cetera, et cetera. So a lot of different activities. It was really dynamic.
Yeah.
So, she has a different viewpoint because she lived on the ground, rode the metro, worked in Russia. So
Yeah. I would like to talk to her if you could, just make.
I'll hook you up. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because it definitely would be interesting to get.
Oh, and then she collected the world's largest. She had two exhibitions. World's largest collection of Yolichny Igrushki.
Say that again.
Yolichny Igrushki.
Okay.
It's holiday tree ornaments.
Okay. Got it. For New Year's. Yeah.
For New Year's, and then became Christmas. What's Christmas pre-revolution? So you had a collection from pre-revolution through the 60s.
Yeah.
Which is now housed at the Russian Museum of Art in Minneapolis.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
I visited that museum.
You did?
Oh yeah.
She donated her collection. That's quite the collection that guy has. She had a book on it. She had a very big exhibit at the Russian Museum of Decorative Arts. It's on the Garden Ring.
Huh.
Yeah.
Okay. Good. Great. No, I would like to talk to her about it. And I'm interested in, well, different directions from what you were saying. And I'm hope I'm not running around like what is it? This Russian saying, if you chase two rabbits, you won't even catch one. I don't remember how to say it in Russian anymore, but the philanthropy, the kinds of philanthropy you were involved with were international organizations that came into Russia. Is that correct?
Yeah, with United Way of Russia, but there are also other smaller ones, mostly for children and orphanages. I forget what they were, but
yeah,
we supported those as well.
Yeah.
Definitely the orchestra is philanthropy.
Yeah.
At best a break even.
Yeah.
They played in the conservatory. They played in the Russian armory. They were really well known, and then they do an international tour every summer. Yeah.
Yeah. So one of the themes of this book, or at least where I started, was this sense that that I had, or I think probably you shared in that period of time, that Russia was becoming integrated into this kind of globalized world, and that that there were Russians who had international viewpoints, and it was over that period of the 90s a growing sophistication and internationalization. And I think there was an assumption that that was going to continue, that that was the path for the future. Do you think you shared that view at that time?
Oh, most certainly so. Yeah. Yeah.
And 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 when did you begin to change any of that viewpoint? When do you think that that separation, or maybe in some cases rejection of foreign models, when did you notice that?
Well, I wrote an article when Putin became president for the AmCham News, which offered the opinion that Putin was good for the country.
Uh-huh.
That it came at a time where there was rampant corporate greed and corruption throughout the country with the so-called oligarchs, and that Putin said, "Okay, fellas, this isn't enough. We need to pay our pensioners. We need to keep our army going. We need to build infrastructure. And you have enough money. You've taken enough money. So either pay up, you'll
Right.
pay taxes, and your employees will pay taxes, uh, or go away." Some of them went away. Guzinski and Berezovsky left, and then he made an example of Khodorkovsky. I think that changed. It changed. So I thought it was good, and then they had the ramp up in oil prices, and everything was good. Then I think the Khodorkovsky thing was kind of the tipping point where you saw where this was going, and that he and his administration would stop. They had no bounds. They had no limits on their abuse of power and corruption for their own sake, and that really, I became disillusioned about the future. People, I always put it this way, Deanne, is that in the Soviet Union, you were told you from cradle to grave, you had no control where you lived, where you went to school, what you read, where you traveled. You had no control of that. The state controlled that.
Right.
So that's gone away. So the Russians do have all those freedoms. They can live where they want, go to school where they want, work where they want, travel where they want, read whatever they want. It's an open. They haven't closed the internet yet. So those freedoms the population has, but the government has its own mission, and the people around Putin's people around him are just really bad. So
Yeah.
and they get away with it. They lie, and then it morphed into, well, we're going to take Crimea, and we've already taken half of Ukraine. So I think it's dangerous. The government's on one mission, and the people, at least the people I know, are biding their time, hoping this will go away, but it's not going away. It's a bad nightmare.
Yeah.
Kashmar.
Right. Yeah. Kashmar. Yeah. And so you left in 2008. Is that correct?
December 2008. Yeah.
Was that because of the 2008 financial crisis?
No, my plan started in the summer of 2008. Actually, in the spring, um, I was, I'm getting older, and I could spend the rest of my days, but I wanted to transition back to the U.S. So it took a while to develop and find that opportunity to come back to the U.S. practice, and there was a place for me to manage that client portfolio. It was my first thing, and then we reorganized, and I moved on to different things. But I retired in 2015 from Deloitte. We have mandatory retirement at 62.
Uh-huh.
So I wanted to get some years under my belt back in the U.S., reacquaint myself with my family,
Yeah.
and in the U.S. And the U.S. has changed so much. I mean, it's not the country I left. It is well. I mean, it's even got worse in the since 2008. I didn't understand that we've become so divided as a country, um, and yeah, we're just kind of on a bad path.
Yeah. But when you came back, did people ask you about Russia? Did you feel that you could talk about your experience? And
Yes and no, but after two sentences, their eyes would go, and it's kind of like being like a Vietnam vet, unless you were there, you don't know. And you say, well, it was great. And we had, it modernized. And I was like, oh, no, no. They're still in line for food or whatever. No, like,
yeah,
people don't get it. They don't get it. And in many ways, Russia leapfrogged the West. You're talking about digital and IT and telecom because they had none. All they had to do was modernize.
right.
And we have a fragmented system in the U.S. that we have different companies creating the same infrastructure and competing. And in Russia, you have one infrastructure that allows everybody to compete because you only need one tower to can serve all the providers. You don't need all the providers that have an individual tower. Right?
Yeah.
So I think at telecoms, it leapfrogged. They said we're going to overlay, internet, fiber optic, wire the country. They did it right, and that was impressive. It was impressive, and the cell phone, the like per capita cell phones is like I don't know when I left like 1.2 cell phones for everybody in the country.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
And all the babushkas had cell phones,
yeah, yeah.
texting, right? Because they didn't have landlines.
Uh, is you know, through you and other people, and I've talked to people in the real estate, and they, in restaurants. I talked to someone in the restaurant business who talked about how Moscow is culinary capital of the world, and real estate people talking about the growth of the sophistication of the real estate markets and the retail space, and you know stuff that is incomprehensible to most Americans because of the way we get our information and the information silo we exist in, plus the obsession with sort of national politics that we have. So, at least for some interested people, I would like for people like you to be speaking through this book, and hopefully to have others decide, well, maybe there's more to this story than we've been given. So
Yeah, I mean, this like the questions I don't want to say they're stupid, but yeah. Well, the mafia is really big over there. It's like I never met the mafia,
yeah,
never ran into the mafia.
right,
So what mafia are you talking about? The traditional, Italian mob that's involved in gambling and drugs and prostitution and everything else. I never ran into that. I
yeah,
never ran into the mafia. I said corruption in the government, yes, but
yeah,
but
yeah,
but no mafia per se. And well, how was it? And I said, well, Moscow went from no restaurants when we first came there, where there were only like 7 restaurants that took the American Express, and that just transformed to having Michelin star restaurants. I said, on every corner there's a sushi bar and a coffee shop,
Right, right.
and it's really cosmopolitan, and there's 170, 80 performing arts sites in the city that are open each night. These people are going to eat and going to music or see a play, and I said it's just pretty dynamic.
Yeah.
Oh, really? Yeah, really?
Really? Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah, really?
Yeah. That's true. That's true. And yes, yeah, it's not good. It's not a good to be so ignorant about the world, and it is ignorance. It's not stupidity. It's ignorance.
Right.
Gagliardi, who wrote the book called Vori. You
No,
know, you don't
not
know this.
familiar.
Okay. Well, it's a history of organized crime in Russia and then into the Soviet Union.
Okay.
So his theory is that when the state broke down at the collapse of the Soviet Union, until Putin's rise and the restoration of the state, that the criminal groupings which had formed Vori the Zakon
Hmm.
that had formed in the penal colonies historically before the Soviet period, and then strengthened in the Soviet period by the penal colonies and the gangs and people that had formed there, that in the 90s they were able to take advantage of certain opportunities and the weakness of the state. And so that's when, for many cash businesses, restaurants, and smaller businesses, where they provided Krisha for a payment or forced their way into ownership, but that period ended with Putin's ascension into power and the strengthening of the state. That basically those guys became businessmen or they were put in jail. That but that there was that period. That's
Yeah.
you know, um,
Yeah, there was that period, and that was the mid '90s,
yeah,
and we were there then, and that's when at least once a week a banker was being shot
yeah,
and killed. It was pretty dangerous. That was all getting sorted out. There was a restaurant called Trend Moss,
yeah,
and the guy was machine gunned down. Okay, that's when the guy at the Radisson Slavyanskaya
right.
Hall.
Paul Tatum.
I'm disappointed. Turned out this way. I went there with high hopes of being maybe naive about becoming a Western democracy or a liberal democracy. Um, I remember what's the song the Germans sing, "The Winds of Change." You know that
Yeah,
song?
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. And that's the kind of when the
The
wall came down.
Scorpions. The
Eastern
Scorpions.
Europe,
Yeah, Scorpions.
Scorpions, yeah.
Yeah,
And then that was the atmosphere in Russia. Um, and I, I forget who wrote the book. Was it Jurgen wrote a book maybe in the right at the beginning of the '90s. It was either Russia 2000 or Russia 2000 or Russia 2020. What model would follow? Will it be the Russian bear? Will it be this liberal democracy or something?
right.
We ended up with the Russian bear.
Yeah,
Um, and was it predictable? I don't think so. I think that the key was how Putin came to power and where did he come from? And no one's unwrapped that mystery of because that's the reason we are where we are.
yeah, yeah,
And so I'm disappointed. I'm hopeful, but if this guy stays on, another 15 years or so, I'm not hopeful because what My question is, what's next? What's the post-Putin
Right.
Russian order look like? Who's gonna assume that kind of power? Um, I don't think it's going to be, it's gonna be ugly. There, I mean, there's already, with Navalny and people on the streets.
Yeah.
And if you don't like it, people leave. A lot of people I know have immigrated out of Russia.
Right. Right.
Um,
Right.
so yeah, disappointed. Very,
Yeah.
disappointed.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, this, by the way, the Scorpions song.
I think that's, one of the things, our interactions people to people with Russians was such a positive experience.
Yeah.
And say, what were your Russian friends like? Our Russian friends are like us. They want a good job. They want a place to live. They want their kids to be educated. They want a nice car. They want to go on vacation.
Yeah.
They like to entertain themselves and
Yeah.
all the things we do. And the family values and family ties are very strong there.
Yeah.
Stronger than in the U.S. I mean,
Yeah.
the extended family is extremely important, and you might have several generations living in a household. It's quite common.
Yeah.
It's common here.
Yeah.
So, the personal relationships were very strong, and it supersedes what it's just like here. People are people. Whatever's going on in the government goes on in the government.
Right.
Whatever Mitch McConnell's doing, what he's doing,
Right.
doesn't
Right.
affect me.
Right.
It does affect me, but it doesn't affect who I am.
Yeah. It's the us and them
Yeah.
dichotomy that Russians have had for centuries. So yeah, I don't. I mean, have I missed something that I should have asked you about?
Um, I don't know. The question I always get was it safe there? Were you safe? Did you run
Oh
into mafia?
yeah, well,
That's kind of like, well, yeah, we rode the metro, we walked down the street.
yeah, yeah. No, no, yeah. I always would get that same.
Yeah.
Aren't you scared? Isn't it dangerous? No, the answer is no. No more than any other big city, and no
I
more
was
than
more, I, 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 there was never a time I felt that I was scared that, I was in mortal danger.
right.
We lived in Philadelphia for 9 years, and I can tell you there were instances where I didn't feel like I was in the right place at the right time,
Yeah,
you
yeah,
know.
yeah.
And I'm a guy in a business suit, and and it's night, and they're
Right.
hoodlums, right?
Yeah, yeah, and it's as one of the famous Bugsy whatever was in the famous gangsters. Why do you rob banks? It's because that's where the money is.
Yeah,
And if you're, in a poor area, no matter where you are in the world, and you're in a suit, and you're a target.
yeah,
So, but never felt that particularly there. I never did.
yeah. One story I want to tell you was at Teledyne. We had this company called Teledyne Water Pick
Okay.
that made household water filtration devices. Okay.
Yeah.
So under sink filters, end of faucet filters. So we had this young guy and his wife just got out of college who um, came to us and started buying these end of faucet filters. So he had to machine an adapter and sell an adapter so it would fit on the faucets. Now the water in Moscow is potable, not like St. Petersburg that has giardia. So it's
Right.
potable, but it has a lot of dissolved metals and solids. So it's not really good for you. But if you put this activated carbon filter on your faucet, it's drinkable.
Uh-huh.
So he bought a number of these, like several hundred, and he and his wife were selling these in the metro. And then he became the largest client He's ordering like 5,000 a month.
Wow.
So
Wow.
then they move out of the metro and they have a little shop. Plus, they're selling the replacement filters, so it's like the razor blades, right?
Right. Yep.
And pretty soon he's moved on. He's ordering under sink filters. He's, as an engineer, thinking about, well, whole house systems, whole apartment systems. Long story short, he becomes the water filtration czar of Russia. So if you're, he has a manufacturing plant, a design engineering firm, an import firm. And so let's say you're Coca-Cola and you're building a plant to produce that. His company would design and install the filtration system for all the water. Any bottled water plants that people put in,
Right.
all his. So Vlad was very successful. And I always use that story as what I saw going on in the market from you, this rag to riches almost story um, that you think is an American story, right? Self-made. It was just there's a number of those stories on and on and on.
Right.
That people have done very well by just using hard work, ingenuity, working the market, being successful.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's not all people who just stole state assets. It's
No,
yeah.
no, no,
Yeah.
no.